Prepare to play.
Hello and welcome to a very, very special Digital Foundry Let's Play here. Today, I'm looking at Super Mario 64 on the PC with fully ray traced lighting. Everything fully ray traced that you can see here. And to talk about this very special kind of content we have here for you today, I'm joined by my friend and colleague, John Linneman. How you doing there, John?
Pretty good, Alex. I like that this is a very, very special
Very
episode.
special.
Because is this the first time we've looked at the PC version of this game on here? I feel like it is.
Yeah, it is.
And this is unique. So what have we got installed here, Alex? Why don't you tell us?
Yeah, so essentially, right now we're looking at the Super Mario 64 EX kind of decompilation project. This is using the ray tracing full render setup from Dario Samo, who I've been in contact with, who's helped me out here to kind of get it set up, as well as talk a lot about how the rendering is done here, as well as you can tell already from the quality of that Mario character model. This is using a special version of the Render 96 project, which has been made especially for this video today, and which we can talk about very soon. But right now, I'm playing the game at 4K output, but 1920 by 1080 internally, and running a whole suite of ray tracing options. And as you can already tell, there's some very interesting things going on here. Like, we look at Mario right here, and you can see the green of the ground bouncing up and lighting up the bottom side of his face. So the game does have a form of global illumination with this ray tracing.
And it's interesting because of a lot of elements in this obviously seem to have been handcrafted to support this new ray tracing feature, because obviously the information required to make it look good doesn't normally exist.
Yeah. There's a lot essentially that Dario had to do to get this running at all. For example, as part of the decompilation project of Super Mario 64 on PC, there's not really like let's just take a look at that. You can already see.
Oh, yeah, before you continue, the reflections there.
Yeah, the reflections on the door handle where you can see Mario and the entire world around him outside. Very, very, very cool. Like, that model is also not the original model, of course. It's a special Render 96 model. Essentially, the models, this game doesn't have like model object files or something like that. And the way normal ray tracing works on the PC with DirectX 12, which is what this is using, you kind of already need models, an understanding of where models are and like their draw calls for them and things like that to start applying ray tracing to them. But the original kind of game is just using pointers for like vertex positions to describe a model. It's not actually like a model file. So to get this working, it took quite a lot of work from Dario's side to even get kind of things to show up properly in the ray tracing view. So here we're in Battlefield, is it called, I believe.
Yep.
Right, John? And looking around at all the really cool kind of things we can see here. You can already look down here. Transparency shadows from this thing above. There's two shadows. So as part of the project, I wanted to not get in the way of the basic gameplay.
Exactly.
That this has. So there's the original drop shadow, so you can always see where you're platforming, like underneath Mario right here, as well as the real-time place shadow there from the sun above. It's very, really well done. Every single light in this version of the game, this RT kind of 64 renderer, Dario had to go in theirself and also kind of place every single light that you see here. So like the sunlight, it's not like Mario actually had any lights already in it. It really doesn't.
No.
So each and every light had to be placed.
And obviously, that's something that could have potentially be automated, but in this case, I think given the look of the game, it is important to go through and adjust them by hand based on what logically makes sense for any given scene. Because you're right, there's no actual lights in Mario 64 in that sense, but there are things designed to look like lights, and the game is colored in a way to give you that impression.
Yeah, let me actually show off one little thing here. So right now, I've been playing the game. It's Mario looking at us. I've been playing the game with a lot of the ray tracing settings set to on, essentially. This is using real-time GI, kind of soft shadows, as well as the denoiser. And that's why if you're looking at this feed right now, I'm presenting a 4K video on YouTube so you can see everything. You can see kind of like dancing in a lot of the shadows or even some of the textures too. This is kind of using a very rudimentary denoising in its beta state because it's still in beta. It will be releasing in a technical alpha in the coming weeks in a certain form, but that'll just be with the base Super Mario 64 kind of support. Won't have render 96 support. That will come, if at all, at a much later time. But let me just talk about, this is the kind of like ultra high quality rendering. You can also, I'm going to hit F1 here and bring up a whole bunch of menus that you can see. And as part of these menus, you can turn on and off a variety of the ray tracing effects, including, let's, I would say, turn off the denoising.
Oh yeah, there we go.
YouTube is hating this at the moment. I'm really sorry. Let's turn off the amount of bounces though. 0 bounce lighting, but you can still see the shadows are kind of not denoised and really kind of, just full of noise on their edges. That's because right now the lighting is sampling like the sun as if it were a full sphere, but you can all have it. I'll have all the lighting be sampled from the center of that sphere to give it really harsh shadows. Let's do that now. So this essentially, cool. This is without denoising, without GI, and without any of the soft shadows, is what kind of ray tracing looked like in many ways, like in the kind of like 90s.
Yeah.
And that's another way to really play the game.
During the early years. And actually, it kind of works for this aesthetic, I think. Because
that's like,
you still get the reflections.
Like that.
Yep, look at that. And you get the super hard shadows. Well, yeah. And
I think it works.
It is funny though, like in that case, how like you said, like they're drawing the original circular shadow, but also the ray trace shadow. So like with the trees, you see that sort of like soft circle around the tree object, and then you see the actual shadow from that model, which by the way, Render 96 obviously adds 3D models for things that were originally sprites. Like those trees are just 2D objects normally.
It's really cool to see. You can also see, because it's like being cast from like all the vertices here, I don't think there's like I don't think that's how with like it's like stencil shadows almost. You can see the vertices inside this thing. I really like that look a lot. And this is kind of like the dream of what when before this game came out, there's like pre-rendered images of Mario surfacing in popular media. And the expectations for what the N64 would look like in terms of its graphics might have been a little bit skewed, because you heard that it was the graphics were being made on like SGI workstations, and
which is true, they were, but
but the real-time models and real-time graphics versus, I would say, what could actually run on the eventual hardware were very different, of course. So if you look at these old images of Mario at that time, it's very, very similar to the aesthetic that you're seeing right now on screen. It's very, very cool. But I actually think we've probably seen enough of Battlefield here. Let's cheat, and I'm going to go back to the original kind of menu here just really quickly, and go out of the game and load up my other save, which has a bit more stuff unlocked, and we can have a bit of fun with that. Yeah, as you see here, when the lights come out, that should come out very shortly, they're actually like lighting up Mario's face and casting shadows. That's really awesome.
That's super cool, yeah.
So let's go back to my one save right here. Yeah, so now I've got a couple things unlocked. I'm going to turn back on the GI and everything, because I just kind of actually like the way it looks quite a bit. It takes a second. So John, what are your memories of actually this game coming out?
Oh, I mean, it was extremely impressive at the time. I think it's one of those things it's almost impossible to communicate now if you weren't there. It's to understand like what this represented when it first appeared. There wasn't anything like this at the time, and for them to come out with something that's so well made, for being one of the first attempts at doing like a real 3D platform game like this, it was shocking to see. And also, nobody had stuff like texture filtering, for instance, which was typically reserved for high-end rendering workstations. This was brand new at this time. Stuff like that, like PC graphics cards were not like stuff like the Voodoo, the Verite. None of that stuff was out yet when the N64 launched.
I really love these rendered 96 trees here. They are straight out of like the cover of a magazine or like Reboot or any of those others like early 90s CGI looking things. They're amazing. And with the highly detailed ray trace lighting, they just look even better.
One thing that would be cool is I wish there was I really like the way this game looks when rendering at its original 320 by 240, but with the edge anti-aliasing of N64, I'd love to see this with N64 image quality, but with the ray tracing features.
Oh, that's something I could probably show on screen right here. I will try and run the game in 320 by 240. Maybe even see if I can get a CRT filter working on it for this video. Let's see.
I bet I could output this to my actual BVM.
Oh my gosh!
I have an Extron device specifically for that.
Oh, here we go. Look at that. Yeah. So here we're getting some of our first taste of the kind of artificial lights in the game. And so Dario, like I said, had to go in and replace or actually place all these lights by hand. Obviously, there's maybe some parts of the rendering that are not like completely done yet.
Yeah.
But you can already get a sense of like that red lighting hitting Mario, kind of bounce light from below and all these other things lighting him up. And as well as since it's sampling the light from a sphere, the light shadow around Mario is really hard around his feet, and then it gets softer.
Exactly, and this
very cool looking.
To quote NVIDIA, you could always say, "It just works."
It does just work. Like this looks, wow, that is so cool. Let's try and.
Oh, I love the water reflection there. It's nice.
Mm-hmm. Mario's. So you were talking about how just kind of mind-blowing Mario 64 is, and I do actually wholly agree with that. What is this stage? I actually forget.
Let's go.
Ooh, yeah. This is a really cool looking stage with the kind of big bounce light from all the sand below.
Yep.
Really monumental game for its time, and one thing that I think that like Quake as well, it nails 3D like really well, while also not being bad. Like a lot of early 3D platformers were not the best of games. Oh gosh.
I mean, this was one of the first, though. I mean, it was very, very, very early in that regard. So to think that it was this good so quickly. Really, really impressive. Also, this game is really well adjusted for the N64 hardware because they were able to do these large open areas like this because thanks to the perspective correct texture mapping that the system supported, you could essentially use gigantic triangles, very, very simple scene geometry, and it would look good. If you tried this on PlayStation with this low polygon count and you textured it, it would just be a mess of warping.
Yeah,
because you can't. That they always had to subdivide their levels into many, many more triangles just to achieve something that looked okay.
Yeah, it's completely different, and very lucky that this game came out when and how it did, and in such top tier form. It's still a joy to run around as Mario today.
It's still fun, yeah.
The one thing you're also noticing as I'm playing this right now is it is playing at 30 FPS. The reason why I'm doing that is because as part of this build, it does support 60 FPS, but due to kind of CPU inefficiencies in this earlier state of things, combined with the Render 96 project, it is actually hard to get a very consistent 60 FPS across all the stages that you can kind of go through. As a result, the game does slow down if it's below 60 in this kind of form right now, so I wanted to just keep it locked at 30 no matter what, and that's why I'm also playing at 1080p. It actually does run better than just 1080p, but I wanted to make sure it's actually at 30.
Right. So like many games from that era, there is no like frame skipping. If you're not hitting your target speed, it literally just runs at a slower speed.
Yeah. But let's go to another stage right now because there's so much to take a look at right now. Bowser 1. Let's go to
what's a nice looking one? Hazy. Oh,
We got Big Boo's Haunt.
okay, you can do Big Boo's Haunt. Hey, it looks like Luigi's Mansion almost.
It really does look like Luigi's Mansion, actually.
I love that ground, like that very soft texture they have. It's very blurred, but when you combine that with, well, not that, but Mario shadows look awesome there.
This is the thing, like the subtlety of the lighting is so impressive. Yeah, unfortunately there's like some Z fighting going on there, but the subtlety of the lighting is so amazing when you take a look at it. And this is only at 1080p. Oh, getting some performance. Woo! Something's taking performance right here. I don't know what. Let's go inside and hope it goes away. Woo! Okay, good.
I love it. Oh yeah, that's great.
Maybe it's because it was sampling like a bunch of lights or something there. I don't know why.
Yep. Looks like you manually place lights above all those doors. There we go. Now it's a relatively darker area here.
Still with oh yeah, the Boo. I can actually grab that thing inside it, can it? When he turns partially visible. Isn't that how it works? So let's talk a bit more about the rendering though, because I did mention this is fully ray traced. So that means the way you can do rendering in a game is you can, like a lot of modern games are hybrid ray tracers. You look at a game like Ratchet & Clank that John and I just talked about on the channel. The primary rendering in that is done through rasterization and compute to kind of put triangles on the screen. This here though actually uses ray tracing for like the primary view that you're looking at here. And on top of that, all of the lighting is done through ray tracing as well. So it's more similar to something like Minecraft RTX or I would say Quake 2 RTX.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is kind of funny. Dario placed the light also like over here, so you could get the light matching up with the
fake volume there.
The fake volume from things. But like I just love this. Back then, there's just like an untextured block to represent volumetric lighting. It would be really interesting to see when this render is taken further into the future if there's ways to, I don't know, even do like volumetric rendering as a part of this render.
Oh,
I don't know.
That would be super cool, especially for the underwater sections. They could do right there, because currently that's not in here. So
yeah, nothing like that at all right now. Actually, that's kind of like, let me show actually what that looks like.
Here.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So like here's just another section with the water, but I'm gonna load up a stage with actual water in it so you can get a sense of what that looks like.
Dire Docks.
Let's do Dire Dock. Here is probably like where in its current state of rendering, you do get like the awesome kind of reflections on the water here, but underwater itself, it's just very much so, other than the light coming from above, it's very, very simplistic in comparison.
Oh, I like that though. Did they do? Okay, look at the subtle reflections there on the tiles. You also get off of that, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
It's a Turok portal.
It's a Turok portal.
Didn't exist yet, but hey.
Now here on the N64, the rippling animation that you're seeing here is done by vertex deformation, which is really bad, at least for kind of, I think, building the acceleration structure on the GPU and maintaining it, and just had horrible frame times initially when Dario did this project. But then he made a kind of smart caching system where every 3 frames it caches into a static mesh. Those static meshes are faster to build but slower to trace. Essentially, it's a trade-off that is just better on the GPU, but just shows how this project was not at all simple and required some very specific thinking to even get Super Mario 64 running on higher-end ray tracing GPUs. Which I think is really, really cool. And I hope when everything's kind of said and done that Dario does a...
You broke the sequence. You're trapped.
I know. Yeah, part of the Render 96 project is the ability to warp, which is why I'm using this right now. Otherwise, I could be showing off the game in the normal, kind of normal graphics that you're used to seeing Super Mario 64 with lower poly models and things like that. But let's take a look at one of the reasons why we're all here in the first place.
Oh, yeah. This level looks awesome just straight away, but this is the magic right here.
Here
Yeah.
Metal Mario, where you can see, like, if you look in the reflection, you can see the little critter moving around on the ground here. Mario's arms reflecting back into him, as well as all the other lights and every single thing pixel perfect in the environment.
No.
Then it's going to go back and I'll have to, don't worry, I can just get it again. It always responds. It's wonderful. Some really cool things to talk about here is, so like, as a part of ray tracing, you can have reflections in reflections. Yeah. Currently, at least here, the way the specular reflections work, like on Metal Mario here, is that there's no second level of reflections in the reflections themselves. So that's for saving performance, but it's not actually like a programmatic thing that cannot be done necessarily. Just right now in the beta state of this game, it's good to try and keep performance up as much as possible.
That was a fun setting in Quake 2 RTX. You could actually change how many reflections and reflections you were doing. You could crank it up to a pretty high level.
It's pretty awesome. You can also do it in Minecraft RTX, I think, too, but it may default or something like that. Let's see if I can actually make this jump. Sometimes I do not make it. Yeah. This is another really cool thing to look at as part of like the really awesome stuff that Render 96 does. Like this door right here has all these like really high polygon geometry, as well as like the kind of ray traced shadows and lighting, as well as the door handle itself, showing the real-time reflections of Mario.
It's such a weird mismatch though when you combine it. It feels like the project, they're onto something here, but it's going to take a lot of work to push it further.
So like the Render 96 project as itself is not part of the ray tracing project, is a lot further ahead than this. This is using a very special kind of build that I built myself, and that Dario and the people working on Render 96 kind of collabed on for me. They kind of wrote the code on the GitHub and put it all together for me, and then I compiled it myself. It required some very special, I would say, I don't know, like for example, Mario in the real Render 96 project has textures on him, but here he's just purely vertex colors. There's no,
which is cool,
real textures on him. So like all the detail you see on his model right now is just from the geometry having a single full solid color on it. It really fits the art style though.
It does.
And I almost feel like Render 96 as a part of this ray tracing that Dario's made and that hopefully people can try out in the future. I think the Render 96 project is going to need to move more in this direction for this, where a lot of the lighting is not done by textures, but it's actually just really high poly models, and maybe normal maps too. Normal maps also look pretty great with ray tracing if they're high detailed enough. But this is an area that just looks really cool. I love it. And just playing Mario 64 again, the animation quality is so good. It is, I don't know. I think
beyond that, there's the way they did analog movement for the time is something that's not really been replicated in further Mario games, where there's so many like gradations of movement speed. Like some analog sticks can't even fully handle it correctly. Like when it's been emulated in the past, it's a little bit difficult.
Yeah, like here, there's already 1, 2, another, and then full out.
But there's lot of
5.
Yeah, there's a lot of granularity to his move that was really cool at the time, and I think they were just playing around with the concept of what does an analog stick offer you, because again, that was the first system to build its core gameplay around an analog stick.
It's really well done. The only thing that I was describing earlier to John is that there's not much you can really fault them for this at the time, but the only thing that hasn't aged as well is the camera perspective, like how you have to always kind of manually move it around. Yep. And it may get stuck on corners and things like that. That is amazing. I still think this game's gameplay is absolutely just perfect. It reminds me of Quake.
And it's funny, you actually played N64 back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Which is like probably the last console you really spent time with.
Yeah. Because that's how I played Doom 64, of course.
And Turok, I assume.
And Turok, yeah. Oh. I didn't play the PC version of Turok until much, much later. So my memories of Turok and loving it so much are actually from a console. But the audience is spitting fire at that. Oh my gosh.
Weirdly, the PC version was the one I played the most back then.
I do love the denoiser here. So, like I said, the project is still at an earlier stage. and it will evolve over time. Right now, the denoiser is using the NVIDIA optics denoiser, and it's pretty heavy. But also it's just full of artifacting in a lot of ways. It is smoothing out the image, but it's not very stable always. So for things like this, there's like no motion vector tracking. So the denoiser doesn't have a really good sense of when objects are moving and things like that. So it is a bit dumb, but it does a good job already in this early state. Let's take a look at another level. I kind of want to go to something with a bit of shifting sand. Now we were already there. Let's take a look at some snow.
Okay.
Here you can see once again the huge white bounce of light from the snow below.
Oh yeah, here we go. This was that transparency shadow that we saw earlier. That was nice.
Yeah, so here's great example. Like the opaque geometry below it, like this bit of brick, has a really dark shadow, but the transparent stuff, the ice above it, leaves a softer kind of grayer shadow where you can even see Mario's shadow within it. Very, very cool. And of course, I think if I jump up to it, you can see a bit of the reflections of Mario directly on
there. It is.
Yeah. Another really cool thing that I really like about this is there are some things that had to be added. Like each time you pick up a coin, if you can see that, there's a bit of light that spawns with each coin pickup. Boom, like that.
I like how in Render 96, the coins are actually 3D objects as well.
Yeah, they are. There's a lot of things that, at least as part of this, are all 3D, and it still has a way to go. I'm pretty sure, if they could, they would. Every single thing that would be a real 3D model, including even things like these particles here, if they probably could.
That's one thing though that the thing that's weird about some of the textured artwork in this game is that, again, it was authored knowing how the N64's triple point filter works, and we've seen that throughout a lot of Nintendo games. Is it doesn't fundamentally, like, the way most graphics cards filter the textures is different from N64, and it does change the way textures look, especially when they're low res, which is why that's one of the things I loved about Doom 64's Kex conversion, was they actually wrote that into a shader to simulate that.
Ray tracing, I actually think they could probably emulate that even better. Ooh, yeah, gosh. I love the ultra high poly snowman right there. I'm trying not to die is one thing that I'm doing. So people watching this may be a bit like, oh, Alex isn't platforming really well. What is he doing? I'm trying
looking at ray tracing.
I'm looking at ray tracing, people. That's what this is all about. And I could die very easily if I'm not paying attention. I just love the ice here and the kind of super sharp reflections. A lot of the reflections in this are ultra sharp, and that's stylistically what's kind of been asked for. They can obviously, based upon the rendering, they can be diffuse or really soft if they want, but like this is going for that kind of 90s clean CGI aesthetic, which is why it is the way it is, Let's take a look at then that one level we were looking at earlier, John. What was it? Is it Bowser in the Dark World, I believe?
Yeah. You're the only person I've seen that actually rotates the camera straight away in this stage.
The thing is, I have a big problem with judging the actual current rotation of the camera sometimes. It's just because sometimes I think I'm moving straight when I'm actually moving sideways, and it causes me to fall off ledges, which it's just because, I don't play a lot of 3D platformers usually, so I gotta adjust them to my liking. I love this. If you actually do look at the coins, they do have the reflections in them of Mario next to them. It's just they're a little bit low res here at around 1080p. Another thing that I really like here is you can see inside of it and the reflections above it, as well as Mario's super diffuse reflection. This is like one of the most of the reflections in the game are actually like hyper sharp, but this is one of the few really. Let me get a little bit closer here and turn the camera, which is not easy to do. Yeah, like that. Get it like Mario's a little bit more diffuse in that reflection. Really cool looking. And if you actually look, the GI is so accurate that Mario's shirt and his overalls do color like the underside of his chin and his hair. He's got like red and blue going on there, reflecting off of him. But let's take a look around the rest of this level. So the way objects are marked up for getting reflections is based upon texturing, essentially. Dario goes in, looks to find the texture, marks it as being able to reflect, and it's usually not based upon some sort of like very complex normal map or a material or like that. It's just like a singular value. That's why the entire texture of a surface is usually reflective. That's not...
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that really needs to be understood when you're bringing back old games and implementing like ray tracing. There's a lot of work that has to be done. Like, there's a ton of work done on Quake 2 RTX, for instance. Like they reauthored so much for that, and it shows. And obviously, you know, he's doing this as a little side project, and this is a good way to do it, I think, to start with. But the potential is very high for pushing this much further.
Yeah, exactly. When it does go out of its like technical alpha phase and more people can touch it like via the GitHub and things like that, if that eventually ends up happening, you're going to end up seeing a lot of really cool stuff. So like this example is something that you just really can't do in games without ray tracing, like these kind of indirect reflections in Mario's side. And
exactly.
Let's rotate the camera around here and get to show the other side of like Mario can prism. So with like ray tracing, you have a really good understanding of... it's a little bit hard to get the camera to do what I want it to do here.
Come on, Lucky 2.
It's doing everything that it doesn't want to do. But basically, you can see through the prism and see Mario inside of it through the other side. Oh, it showed Metal Mario over there for a second. Does it usually do that? I don't know. That was very interesting. But there's like so many things that ray tracing can do that, like all the reflections that you see on the stage, that really impossible to do with even things like planar reflections, because most of these objects here are not even planar. So as a part of this, though, I do want to extend my gratitude to Dario for essentially allowing me to test this and show this off, as well as the Render 96 project people working behind that, who did essentially retool a lot of their artwork to actually work properly with this demo and did special work for it. So this is not something that was at all easy to do, and it's very much so appreciated by everyone at Digital Foundry. And I hope people watching this right now also get a sense of just how cool this is. It may look a little bit plain, obviously, because we're talking about Mario here. But I think in general, you can already see, even through like the low polygon models and the simple materials, that there's something very special here. And it's almost like childhood dreams for me in terms of how this looks. This is like when I saw images of ray tracing in the 90s or in the early 2000s, like with all like the Quake ray tracing efforts that would happen. I just couldn't imagine like one day I'd be playing the games like this with ray tracing.
Yeah, tell me about it. It's super cool. I love it.
There could be possibly more things I could show off, but in due time, when this does release out of its kind of technical alpha and it is available to more people, try it out yourself and see how it runs. Right now, I'm playing this on an RTX 3090. It is very heavy.
That's so funny,
to say the least. Super Mario 64. I don't think that was part of their design originally. They didn't think about RTX 3090s existing. So it'll be a bit heavy. If you do eventually get to try it out, you'll probably figure that out for yourself. But John, thank you so much for talking to me today about Super Mario 64 here on PC.
Sure thing, Alex.
Running ray tracing. And please, if you did like this video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're already a subscriber, please hit that little bell in the corner to be informed as soon as Digital Foundry posts a video. If you want to see this video in ultra high quality, support us on Patreon to get a download link. If you want to talk to John or myself about this project, or want to get in contact with those who have spent the awesome time coding, making the art, programming this themselves, follow Dario and Render96 please on Twitter. And I guess, as always, this is Alex saying, Mamma Mia!
So long, Bowser!